Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the EV Geek podcast, where we dive into the latest and greatest in the world of electric vehicles and sustainable energy. Today, we are talking Hyundai. Hyundai Motor Group, which is made up of Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis, is making waves in the U.S. this week when news was released that they hit double-digit EV market share. Hyundai Motor Group accounted for 10% of the EV market, which beats Ford's 7.4% and GM's 6.3%. This also comes as news that Tesla's EV market share dropped below 50% for the first time in the second quarter of this year, making up 49.7% of EV sales in the US. This is all according to an article released by Motor Intelligence, which I will include a link to in the show notes. With some good news comes some disappointing news from Hyundai. Sales of the Ioniq 5 and 6 slipped in the last month, but are still up double-digit percentages this year. However, Kia sales nearly doubled in July, which has been led by the sales of its three-row EV, the EV9. In fact, the EV9 has outpaced sales of some of its rivals, such as the Volkswagen ID4, Rivian R1T, and the Tesla Model X for the first half of this year. Hyundai Motors' other brand, Genesis, is also adding new standalone dealerships and are now up to 56 of these facilities. Hyundai Motors EV brand is showing no signs of slowing down either, with some heavy-duty investments in North America with their new plant in Georgia, creating thousands of jobs. Building their EVs in North America will allow Hyundai Motors to take advantage of the federal government tax credit. Kia began production of the EV9 at its Georgia plant in May, and it will be the first model to qualify for the full $7,500 tax credit. Kia is also offering a massive discount of up to $18,000 on the EV9. This is true. I found one at my local dealership. It was the Wind model, the rear-wheel drive, I believe, which gets you the most mileage for about $47,000 or $48,000, which is about $18,000 below than what they normally sell for. So what is Hyundai doing right, causing other EV manufacturers to be left behind? Sebastian is joining us today to talk about Hyundai's recent success in the EV market here in the U.S. Sebastian, how are you today?
I'm great.
All right, so what do you make of Hyundai's recent success with EV sales here in the U.S.?
Yeah, so I think it's boils down to really two things, maybe three things. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about the third one in a minute. But first, I just, they kind of started with a form factor that people want, right? They started with two mid-size crossovers with the EV6 and the Ioniq 5. Technically, they started with two other vehicles, but those were kind of compliance cars, and they still kind of are, although they've grown into their own identity, the Niro EV and the Kona EV, but really their kind of big push into the EV world was with the Ioniq 5 and the EV6. So many EV manufacturers are starting with halo cars, vehicles you can sell for a lot of money and make in limited quantity, and it has worked out for manufacturers. You have Tesla, they started with Model S and then moved into the Model X, and they're super successful. It's great for them. But then you have your other brands like Lucid starting with the Air, which is an excellent car, but really expensive. And then even, when you think about Rivian, they started with the R1S and R1T, which are, maybe not the in pricing maybe isn't insane on them, but they're still expensive cars, right? And so it's just kind of interesting, that Hyundai did start basically, we're going to come out swinging with a mid-size crossover, and the pricing isn't terrible especially when they were released, compared to the other EVs on the market. And then not only are they coming out with the mid-size crossover, they came out and it seems like we're ready to sell in the volume that they thought they would need to, because that's the other part of when you do the halo cars, is because you can't make a ton of them, right? You don't have the resources, funding, whatever. And so by, doing the mid-size crossover and then making enough that people, maybe making enough to keep kind of availability steady, I think that was a really good move by them. They also seem like on that topic, their pricing seems to be pretty spot on. They the new Kona and Niro both start right around $30,000, which is a good entry level price for a small crossover, especially considering it's electric. Yes,
and if you think about those two cars too, and what Volvo's coming out with the EX30, there's not much difference there with what they're offering that's 5 or 6 years old now, as compared to what Volvo's coming out with the EX30. I mean, same kind of mileage. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
same kind of the 4-door architecture. So there's not much difference there, and with the older technology.
Yeah. And then, and then just adding into that, the Ioniq 5 and EV6 now are starting in the low 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's before any incentives. Hyundai and Kia are known to do pretty lucrative lease deals on their EV models,
Mm-hmm.
kind of, again, getting them out the door, right? Maybe getting it to, bringing prices down to where people want to buy it. And then now you add in Hyundai Kia has started selling the EV9, which is a 3-row SUV, which we know how the 3-row SUV market is right now. And then we know Hyundai intends to release the Ioniq 9, which is another 3-row SUV. Those should be successful just because, again, they're meeting the market where it's at. And then add into that, Kia's also launched the EV3, which is a compact crossover, which, again, another spot that's not really served by the current EV market. There's not a whole lot of compact crossovers on sale right now. So hopefully by meeting the market where it's at, hopefully, again, that just brings more success for them. And then kind of the second thing that I wanted to point out is their EV tech is good.
Mm-hmm.
It's especially when the Ioniq 5 and EV6 were released, it was pretty far ahead of the pack. The only other 800 volt class vehicles were Taycan and Lucid Air, and I can't think of any other ones off the top of my head.
I think it was just a Taycan and Lucid. Yep.
So, by coming out again with a mid-size crossover in an affordable price range that has this kind of next-gen EV technology in it, that just kind of hurdles them above the competition a little bit, especially because by doing that, they're now, instead of making an EV that charges in 45 minutes, 10 to 80%, 18 minutes, right?
Yep.
One of the biggest arguments you always hear from people is like, well, I can fill up my gas car in 5 minutes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can. Yeah, that's, that is a valid argument. So by coming out, with the EV6 and the Ioniq 5 that can charge in 18 minutes from 10 to 80%, you're talking about, it's maybe not that big of a difference, right? Because ultimately, by the time you go to use a bathroom or whatever, especially on a road trip, your gas stop's going to take 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that was a really good move for Hyundai Kia. And I think that's helped them a lot, give them that leg up over competitors because, now the midsize crossover EV market is pretty saturated. You've got Mustang Mach-E, you've got Model Y, you've got Equinox, Blazer,
Lyric, ID4,
all
Prologue,
these other
Blazer,
vehicles.
yep, all of them, yep.
Yeah. And then just finally, they also don't seem to be slowing their plans. We've seen GM and Ford talk about slowing down EV plans due to slow adoption. Ford last week, announced that they're delaying their T3 vehicles to 2027 with no intention of launching any other fully electric model until 2026. And their reasoning was slow sales. That's what they said.
But you only have 2 models out there, so.
Yeah, and it's like, and I think that's ultimately what it boils down to is their slow sales are just because maybe their models aren't that competitive in the in the market. The Mustang Mach-E is a good car. I like the Mustang Mach-E. I like the way it looks. I think it's a good choice. But when you start comparing the Mustang Mach-E to the other vehicles on the market, it doesn't hold up as well, right? It's when the market is that saturated, you need to be more than just good. You need to be more than just an okay car. And that's where, we see like the Ioniq 5 and the EV6 Excel is because you take that good car and then you add in, but it charges twice as fast as the other vehicles it competes against, or it has, more range than the base. I think it has more. I might be lying on that one. I think it has more range than the base Mach-E.
I believe it does.
Okay. Yep. Or it has more range than even, I think, the base Model Y does. That's just standard range, rear-wheel drive. Just stuff like that, it's like you're starting to get, leg up off the competition. So I think that's good for Hyundai Kia, And then also you start considering, which Hyundai Kia don't qualify for it either, but they make up for it in lease incentives. Mustang Mach-E also doesn't qualify for tax credit or anything like that because of where it's built. So, it's just a kind of interesting tidbit of, we see these legacy automakers, we're pulling back our EV plans. But it doesn't really feel like Hyundai Kia is doing that because, like I mentioned before, we now have the Ioniq 5, the EV6, the Kona EV, the Niro EV, now the EV9, and then the Ioniq 9 is coming soon, and the EV3 is coming soon. They really seem to be bringing in a lot of models. We even have Volkswagen, who currently in the US sells one model and has for like 3 or 4 years
4
now.
years. Mm-hmm.
And they're finally saying, "Oh, we're going to sell a second model in the US. It's going to be a $60,000 bus
Yeah.
that serves a very niche market."
Yep.
Again, I love it. I think it's great. I really like it.
If they want to give us one, we'll drive it. I mean, yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's like, is it slow sales, or is it just that you're not putting in a lot of the effort to kind of sell cars?
That is true. And if you think about what Kia has done, first off, their designs are cool. Even with their ICE vehicles, they've started to design really cool cars that people like and can afford. Before, if you wanted a really cool looking car, couldn't afford it, but Hyundai and Kia are known for making affordable cars. And plus, whenever they decided to take EV serious, like you said, they came up with their own platform, the GMP platform, decided, hey, we're going to have our own platform. They didn't have to do the 800-volt architecture because no one was doing it. They could have made a cheaper car with 400-volt architecture, but you made a good point about the Mach-E. If you look at the Mach-E, the Model Y, and the Kia, your choices are, okay, if I want a Mach-E, or for the same price, I can get a Model Y that's got great tech, or I can get a Kia that charges stupid fast on a supercharger. Then the Mach-E kind of looks less attractive to you when they all are about the same price. Mach-E did have a leg up a couple years ago when Model Y prices were a lot higher than what they were now. They could be competitive, but now that Model Y prices has come down, it kind of makes the competition like, But Kia has some things. The Kia does charge faster at superchargers than the Model Y and Model 3 do. That's just a better architecture, better charging curve. I mean, I can pop out at 250, 260, 230, 240 kilowatts, and it's going to stay there till 70, 80%. It's not going to dive down.
Yeah, and you bring up, you kind of encapsulated that whole kind of tangent into one sentence there of the EV market 3 or 4 years ago was way different than it is now, right? 3 or 4 years ago, those vehicles made a lot more sense because they were competing against vehicles that were similar to them. So ultimately, it boiled down to which one do you like more? Do you like the look of the Mach-E more? Do you like kind of the interior layout? All the technology was about the same. And so now though the leg up is after 4 years, they're still selling the Mach-E is the same. Well, there's been minor improvements, but largely the same vehicle. Model Y is largely the same vehicle. And the Ioniq 5, they've been on sale for, I guess, 2 years now. It was 2022, I think, was the first model year for
my wife's Kia EV6 we got when it first came out. It was winter, spring of 22. Yep.
Okay. So, they kind of came in after those initial crossovers, and then they did all the same stuff that they do, but then they add in that, but we're also 800 volt now. So now it's like, now the rest of the competition is generationally behind. And
also after 2 years, they've done some small redesigns to their vehicle. They changed how the front looks on the EV9 with the headlights looking a little bit different. So they've already noticed after 2 years, we're gonna go in there and tweak some stuff as well.
Yep.
All right, Sebastian, thank you for joining us today as we made sense of current EV sales. You have anything else you want to add before we leave?
No, not really.
All right. Before y'all leave today, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and tap on that notification icon so you know when new episodes drop. You can find this podcast on X by searching at the EV Geek, and you can follow Sebastian by searching at Kilowatt Station. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you again on our next episode. So long, everyone.